Hi everybody, I'm Nick, CEO of ILUS International, ILUS. I'm just here to talk a little bit about the upcoming listing plans, uplisting plans should we say, talk a little bit more about all the speculation around the spin-out plans and spin-out strategies that we've seen on all the different forums and chat groups. Must have had a million emails about it. So we're still not really at liberty to say too much about it, but I can help to try and clarify some more of the thinking process behind it. So here we are. Firstly, obviously like to thank our shareholders and a massive thank you to my team, who work tirelessly day in and day out with a smile on their face, motivated as much as I am. It's really great to be part of a team that is so driven to get to our destination and to get to our goals. And we certainly have our shareholder value at the forefront of our mind. Even when we go through periods like we went through the summer of let's say a share price drought, we obviously take a lot of criticism and a lot of flack from the market. However, we believe very strongly in what we do. We believe very strongly in our team, our capability, and ultimately we back our technology and our business plan. We know we're on the right track. We are fluid enough to change and modify things when we have to. However, at the moment we believe we're very much on the right track, and right through that period through the summer, at no time did we panic, at no time were we nervous. We knew in the end of the day, our business will be reflected in the price and the share price later on, which is really where we're trying to get to. We're not looking at a short-term view, and I think we've made that very clear time and time again in all of our discussions, all of our presentations. And I think now the shareholder base certainly seems to be seeing us for that sort of light, really, which leads, so firstly obviously to thank you guys for that. But that very much leads us into the longer term plan of where we're trying to go and what are we trying to do. As a group or conglomerate, I think the word's been used a few times recently. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to just discuss a little bit more about that. And then, I'm sure we'll explore much more of that over the next few weeks and months and into the main shareholder meeting at the end of January. So I'm not at liberty to say too much about the exact detail, exactly the plan, exactly what's going to happen. All I can assure people is that there is a plan, a very clear plan, and there will be an uplisting that is at the forefront of our mind and the forefront of our business plan and our strategy. It's slightly outside of the box of what's been done or normal, which I guess you've probably come to bear to understand. That's how we operate. We have our own plan. We're not a sheep. We don't follow the market and follow everybody else. We have a very definitive idea of where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do, and we will get there. I think you guys have got to know JP Backwell, the managing director of ILUS, very well over the last few months, as he's sort of been taking a lot more of the reins and a lot of the pressure off me while I'm really been working on this bigger plan and the bigger strategy. And JP's very much hands on the wheel, implementing these acquisitions and some of the deals and the team building that's going on and the strategic implementation. So, and neither JP or I like coming second, and we definitely don't have losing in our vocabulary. So this will happen without a doubt, and it will happen as soon as possible. Obviously, the listing process is quite a complex minefield. There's a lot of different criteria, a lot of different matrices that need to be met, and a lot of documentation and forms and filings and SEC stuff and FINRA stuff and you name it that has to be done, and it has to be done properly. The big boards are not like the OTC where you've got alternative reporting and all these loose things that go on. We're in we're going to a very tight space, which is exactly why we want to go there. Our corporate governance is strong, the way we run our business is strong, and we really should have access to proper capital, proper institutional funds to allow us to grow this business into the monster that we want to grow it. So we can't give definitive timelines on exactly how soon it will be. All I say is it will be as soon as possible. We're not in this game to monkey around for the next year or two talking about it. That's not the way we operate. You've probably gathered that from us already. But on the other hand, there's a lot of other people involved with this, so we can only go as fast as we can, but we are bashing every door and every phone to get it done as quick as possible. And I think, as I mentioned previously, it's a slightly outside of the box strategy that we're taking, really because we don't really have a choice in the current ILUS business the way it stands. Obviously the float is very heavy, and without doing a reverse, which we've said many times in the past, which is not on our agenda. And until we're fully reporting, to actually uplist the main vehicle as it stands at the moment is a slower process, and we don't want to wait that long. It's not an option to wait that long. And I think probably from our shareholder base, I think you guys would agree, the core business, the current core business, is probably in the wrong space in the OTC market. It really should be in front of the institutional investors, where we can get, where we can raise large amounts of capital and grow this business, that particular business into a big scale. The timing in the market is now. The fire brigades globally are modernizing at a rapid speed. They need to modernize. They don't have a choice. They've been underinvested in for decades. And therefore we need to hit the ground running, and we need to take the opportunity while it's there. So, which leads me on to sort of discuss a little bit more about the actual, let's say, rumors, discussion, questions, whatever, about a potential spin out. So let me discuss a little bit more about that. So this leads me on to discuss a little bit about the actual potential spin out that might occur. A lot of speculation of people not really understanding what it is or how that might work. At this point, as I've said in previous recordings, we're not saying we are doing it, we're not saying we're not doing it. All I can say is there will be an uplisting, that is for sure. And as more information sort of becomes more crystallized and we're actually allowed to disclose the information, we certainly will. At this point, we are limited really to what we can say in terms of regulation, and also in terms of protecting the interest of the current shareholders and the current business, and also laying a perfectly strong foundation for the way forward. So let's look at the current business, what we have under ILUS at the moment, ILUS. And I think perhaps some people don't necessarily understand the different divisions of the business, because not all of them are fully commercialized yet. So if we look at the technology that Firebug has, right, it's really about atomizing water and water saving and life saving. So that technology, the same technology which we have patents on, that same technology can be used for multiple applications. So the first one being, if we just say firefighting in general, that would be too broad a term. So let's break that down into fire and rescue response. So that is essentially one division of a business. Now that business it's about a $7 to $8 billion market globally. And what that really is every fire brigade and every responder in the world is our potential customer. Whether that is private, i.e. municipal fire brigades, government fire brigades, airport fire brigades. It also covers all the volunteers. It covers, as I said, airports, schools, universities, colleges, football stadiums, shopping malls, oil and gas sector, power stations, harbors, or whatever. They all have all of those big, large facilities have their own fire and response teams, fire and rescue teams, which need a special type of equipment. So if we generalize the fire and rescue sector of our business, that essentially is a product. It's a mobile product that will turn up to a fire and extinguish a fire with a person. So there will physically be a firefighter or a robotic instrument in the future to physically turn on a nozzle and put out a fire. So what we would traditionally understand as being a fireman, right? So that business, as I said, is potentially, the market is potentially $7 to $8 billion market. Now that includes firefighting vehicles, i.e. big trucks, small trucks. It includes nozzles, pumps, water tanks, the vehicle bodies, everything that go with that. And within the ILUS group at the moment, that is our business where we are commercialized. That is the business where we're physically generating a lot of our revenue. So that business is scalable relatively quickly and relatively simply. And that is the acquisitions really at the current way, apart from BCD, the current acquisitions are all around that business unit. So what I mean by it's scalable very easily is we can mass produce nozzles. The nozzle is a bill of material. It's a bunch of assembled parts. We assemble those parts, manufacture them either in one location or multiple locations, or we can manufacture the technology in one part and assemble across the world in different locations, all in companies that we've acquired. So if you recall back to our strategies that we've discussed, our acquisition strategy is around threefold. One is to acquire manufacturing capacity. 2 is to acquire routes to market. And 3 is to acquire technology enhancement. So the manufacturing of those nozzles or pumps or bodies or vehicle bodies, whatever it might be, will be manufactured in the acquisition targets that we've acquired and will be acquiring further. So that part of the business is relatively simple. It's a product with a product code. It's a standardized product. The same nozzle can be fitted on a vehicle or a pump anywhere from Tokyo to Rio de Janeiro, can be shipped by a courier, opened out of a box, sold online, whatever. Nice and simple. What a simple business. And it just needs scale, which means the second part of our acquisition strategy is the routes to market and the distribution channels. So we need to distribute those products globally as quickly as we can, which in theory is very simple. It's a really simple theory. So why would somebody not buy a nozzle or a pump or whatever that is going to be 63% more efficient than what they're currently using? Well, there's a number of, let's say, hooks and claws and challenges around the sale process, or the short-term, medium-term sale process. So why does that exist? It exists for a number of reasons. The first reason is that the private sector, or quasi-private sector, if we want to call it that, i.e. power stations, airports, seaports, military bases, places like that where it's government, but some of it's privatized, some of it's totally private, some of it's got government funding, but it's private, but i.e. it's not municipal. It's not a municipality orientated. It's not a totally government-driven service. Those type of people move very quickly on purchasing a product. You present a nozzle to them that's going to save lives, save water, make them more efficient, and ultimately save them money. They walk down to the end of the corridor and they get somebody to sign a purchase order, and it happens. The deals happen quickly. I'm probably exaggerating walking down the corridor, but you get the idea of what I mean. It's not a drawn-out 6-month, 1-year process, because they have responsibility and they can make decisions to do it. That is where our current revenue is coming from, what we call the low-lying fruit. We can present to a power station or an airport, they like it, we do a demonstration, they like it more, they buy it. Done. But obviously, globally, as that grows, obviously that volume is huge. But the real volume lies in the municipal fire and rescue services, the government fire brigades. New York might have several hundred fire trucks. Tokyo might have several hundred fire trucks. All the big cities, or basically the whole world, the government has the majority, the lion's share of the fire trucks. So for us to get pumps and nozzles onto every fire truck globally, we really have to shift our sales, but our sales focus has to become heavily on the government sector. Now, the government sector is a totally different sales cycle. So when we sell, let's say, a nozzle to a government, it becomes a different challenge. We present to the government, that guy, to the fire brigade, the guy likes it, he presents it to his chief gives it to the R&D department, the R&D department do some work on it to see whether it's going to work in their fire brigade. He quite likes it, he gives it to the training department do some work, then the guy leaves, gets promoted, then you go back to the start and the R&D guy's left because he's now been promoted, and this just goes on and on and on. Anybody that sells any products to government sector will know this is how it works. So what should take 30 days or 60 days or 90 days can take a year, sometimes longer. And ultimately we've got this, let's say, tricky part in the middle of that sales process with the government is the unions. The fire brigades, more or less globally, are quite a unionized organization. And what the unions actually see is this nozzle can allow a fire brigade to use a small truck, i.e. a small vehicle with 2 people on it. So a union, in their minds, say, why would we go from using a big truck that's got 5 people to a small truck that's got 2 people? This means it's going to cost people's jobs. So the unions usually dig their claws in. Then we've got to appease the unions that's not what actually happens. What happens is a fire brigade will, instead of buying 1 big truck, they will buy 4 or 5 small trucks. So they will still use the same amount of people. But what that means is the fire brigade are now using less fuel, they're able to cover a bigger area for much less cost, provide a much better level of service to the community, save much more lives, and everybody's a winner. But it takes some time to educate the unions and the government sector around that type of plan. So the strategy around the fire and rescue products at the moment is very much orientated around the low-lying fruit, which is private sector, quasi-private sector, while we are planting the seeds and sort of starting to lay the furrows of the government sector sales, which we know in 3 to 4 to 5 years' time will be the volume that really drives the fire and rescue division. So that is one entire business unit. As I said previously, it's a $7 to $8 billion market. So its sales cycle, its sales channel, its sales focus, its marketing, everything about that business is very unique in what it does. And it's very scalable. It can drive it, it can really grow very quickly. And that business really is strategically planned around a roll-up model where we are acquiring manufacturing, routes to market, and technology. And we'll continue to develop the technology side of that business in particular, into to drones for surveillance. I think we've spoken about wearable tech, into an IoT platform. We've got a very clear business plan for that business, and we're building a very distinctive team that are experienced in that particular business. So if we jump back a second now, look at the world. The cities are getting larger, taller, wider, more congested. There's more dependency on the fire brigade to cover more of an important, to cover an area quicker. But importantly, they're under the microscope of social media. So when there's a fire, within seconds, they're on all sorts of Twitters and Facebooks and whatever. So the fire chiefs are under a lot of pressure to deliver more. But for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they've been heavily underinvested. The fire brigades globally are so underinvested in compared to some of the other services. So now, in order to deliver that service and cover a bigger area with less money, plus using less water, because we've got a global shortage of water, plus not pump out CO2 emissions from their big trucks, which they need more of, plus protect the people in the surrounding areas, the urban edge, because especially since COVID, it's even sped up significantly since COVID. People are moving out of the cities and they're moving into the fringes of the urban edge. They want to live in the country. They want to be outside. There's more golf courses, polo estates, whatever. So the fire brigade is responsible to come there from from a fire chief now just having to look after the city centre. He's now got all these outlying areas where people are living. 20, 30 years ago, when there was a fire out in the area, often they would just leave it. They'd make sure it was contained, they'd cut a big fire break or do a backburn so it couldn't reach the city, and they'd leave it. Now they can't. There's people living in those areas. So their responsibility is significantly more. So from the fire and rescue part of our business, we're solving that problem. We're giving them smaller rapid response products. We're giving them nozzles. We're giving them pumps. All the products are modular, so they can buy just the nozzle, just the pump, just the body. They can fit the whole lot together if they really want an effective system. But most importantly, our product on that business is interchangeable with what is already on the market. So in other words, a fire truck doesn't need to change anything on its vehicle. It can literally just buy our nozzle, plug it into what it already has, and within 45 seconds, it's got a misting capability. So the fire and rescue business is really its own business unit, and we need to get very involved on the ground, at a ground level, with the fire brigades and demonstrations and the communities and all that type of stuff. So we're comfortable in that business being its own business unit. We're confident that the market size is there. The municipal fire suppliers, especially in the US market, each state has its own little, let's say, municipal supplier. It's usually a family-orientated business, a family business, 5, 10, 15 people that are supplying all the fire equipment that a fire and rescue department may need. So that would mean that they're supplying nozzles and pumps and helmets, fire suits, boots, whatever, to the fire services in their state. A lot of those businesses are being run by boomers, and those people are starting to retire. That older generation is starting to retire, and they're looking for an exit plan. At the same time, we are entering that market aggressively, wanting to buy up our distribution channels, which is a natural match. So we're coming along, going to mop up a lot of these small municipal traders throughout each state, which will then create us a significant footprint and a route to market to be able to roll out our product quite aggressively. And a lot of those businesses are, let's say, one-dimensional with respect to them. They sell a limited range of products. They sell what's on the market. They don't necessarily have any technology offering. So we're comfortable that putting those businesses together, we're going to be able to grow those quite significantly as well. And naturally, that will bring a significant volume of both revenue and profit, and credibility of brand across the whole of the US. So again, as we mentioned before, we're comfortable in that business model, we're comfortable in that strategy, and that's very much the fire and rescue unit that we're trying to build and will continue to build. So I just wanted to share some thoughts with with our investor base, current shareholders and future shareholders that may not have actually thought this through. When a public company owns a portion of another public company or shares in another public company, it naturally benefits from the share price increase of the other public company. I know that may sound obvious, but if we look at our current example, for example, in ILUS owns 10 million shares in DRCR, and DRCR, I think it's in our books at around about $2. It's now trading at $3 something, $3.20, $3.30. That business potentially has unicorn potential. It's got a ridiculously tiny float, and the technology is just mind-blowing. Anyway, the point of my conversation is I predicted that share price, and this is only in my opinion, this is not investor advice. I predicted that share price will probably go closer towards the $10 mark in not the too distant future. But what that means is that share increase now means that ILUS is holding $100 million worth of DRCR stock, not the $20 million that's sitting on our current balance sheet. Well, that $80 million goes into our books as an asset, as profit. So, naturally, as one public company increases in value, it so should have a direct impact on the valuation of the other company. So I just use DRCR as an example for our current plans, because obviously we're talking about a spin out and potentially a subsidiary spinning out potentially with an S1 to do an uplist. And obviously that would naturally mean if ILUS has got ILUS parent is holding a huge amount of shares in the spun out company, which uplists, that naturally is going to have a pull through onto our current balance sheet. So I just thought I'd share that information for you, in case you hadn't actually thought that through. Because there's obviously been a lot of conversation about what are the advantages, why would we spin that out, why wouldn't we do this, why would we do X, Y, and Z. So again, we're just trying to give you the information for you guys to sort of make your own decisions and minds up, so when we start to actually announce the formalities of what we aren't doing, at least people are informed. So as I said before, we feel that this will be very beneficial to what we're doing with the uplisting spin out plans will be very beneficial to our long-term plans and long-term shareholders. The fixed firefighting systems. So this, for simplicity, is the same technology that we use in the fire and rescue equipment, but I mean technology, not products. So it's not the same nozzle, it's not the same pumps, none of the products are the same, but the technology is the same. So the technology around the patents and the way we produce the mist and the way we form the droplets and the way we push the droplets out at a low pressure. So what a fixed firefighting system is something which doesn't require man involvement. So it has it's permanently mounted, let's say fixed to a building or over a machine or over a plant or whatever, and it has its own detection. It extinguishes by itself, will send a signal back to whoever, the fire commander, the security officer, the facilities manager, whatever it might be, that there's been a fire. And it's already been extinguished, hopefully. And that, if we can really break that down to a more simplistic one, it's something that you'll be familiar with, like a sprinkler in your, hotel or apartment or whatever. A real simple, breakdown of understanding of a fixed firefighting system. So our technology is perfectly suitable for both. The fixed firefighting system market is about $11 billion market, potentially larger, but it's listed as $11 billion at the moment. And that covers everything from industrial risk to residential to commercial risk protection, shopping centers, retail, whatever. So that particular business model is completely different to our fire and rescue division. Completely different in every way. The only thing it's the same is the technology. And it's not even the same products, it's just the technology within the products. So why do I say that is, if we looked at the fire and rescue products, it's a product in a box. It's a nozzle that has a product code. It can be stocked. It can be sold through an internet. Any fire brigade can use it. It's a piece of cake to understand. The fixed firefighting system, every job is different. A Hilton hotel in New York will be a totally different design to a Hilton hotel in, I don't know, wherever, Shanghai, for example, which means we have to have engineers on the ground to do design work, to do flow calculations, to do technical drawings. Every job needs to be looked at differently. We need to cover a wide range of certifications and approvals. And at the end of the day, the revenue model is totally different. So as opposed to fire and rescue, where we sell a nozzle, $1,500, for example, job done, or sell a fire truck, $200,000, job done. On the fixed systems, there's a whole different thing. There's an installation, there's a design cost, there's the installation and project management, there's the commissioning afterwards, the certification, and then there's an ongoing maintenance that needs to be done. So there's an entire different revenue model, which also requires different skills. It requires an entire different business unit and a different back office, and it's got nothing to do with fire and rescue. They don't go hand in hand in any way at all. Really, the only crossover is the R&D team, who understand both types of products because they understand the technology. So the fixed fire systems, we decided not to go aggressively into the fixed fire systems in the initial stages of the business for a number of reasons. The first reason is the sales cycle is much slower. So especially on the bigger jobs, the customers will, and you're working with architects and specifiers. You're not actually, in the early days, you're not really working with the buyer himself. You're working with someone who's specifying what design of kitchen is going to go into a restaurant, or what type of fire system is going to go into a yacht or a hotel or whatever. So it's a slower sales cycle. First, you've got to work with specifiers and architects. Then you've got to work with the installer who's actually doing the installation, and work with the guys that are tendering for the actual project. Then you've got to work with the customer who's actually taken over the site and look after the maintenance aspect of it. So you've got to have different customers, different distribution, different service teams, etc., which is all great. These are all massive monetization, revenue opportunities. But we felt that was too much for us in the early days of our business to go after, let's say, the shadows of a project which we knew the inquiry may come in today, but we may not be delivering that until 18 months' time. And we didn't want to be, let's say, busy fools building this humongous pipeline, but no revenue coming in and ultimately no real business behind it at this particular point. And secondly, the certifications are so different. So, there's different certification for certain types of buildings, there's different certifications for certain type of machinery, different countries have different certifications. So, and the certifications for those type of products are ridiculously expensive. I mean, to certify a nozzle, for example, or a range of nozzles for buildings, for commercial buildings, i.e. hotels or offices, can cost north of $1 million for the certification alone and take a year. So that was not sort of a place that we really wanted to spend our focus and initial capital when we knew that the fire and rescue market is untapped, underinvested, and we have no competition. There's nobody in the fire and rescue market that does what we do. Nobody globally. Yes, there's other mist providers. They're high pressure and they add a chemical. All of them. Yes, there's big water nozzles that claim they've got fogging. It's not the same thing. Their fogging droplets are north of 500 microns, where we down at 25 to 50 microns. They're not comparable. It's like your shower versus the steam out of a kettle. They're not comparative systems. There is nobody that does what we do in the fire response rescue department. But on the fixed systems, there are quite a few mist players. There's quite a few mist players, and some of the guys have got quite good technology. The likes of Marioff, UTC company, they've got really great technology. Tyco have got great technology. But again, we're going after a different space, and let me explain what I mean by this. So probably as you've come to know from us, we're really focused on niche. We focused on speciality and special sort of strategy on the way we do things. We don't want to be one of a crowd. We don't want to be a sheep. It's not the way we operate. We're disruptive. We've got technology, and that's the market that we'll continue to go after. So we don't initially really predict selling our normal mist fixed system nozzles, for example, to everyday hotels in the first phase, 1 or 2 years of our rollout of fixed systems. And I'll tell you why. If you look at a hotel cycle, let's say a normal sprinkler head will cost, and sprinkler nozzle may cost something between $3 and $30, depending on what type of nozzle, for example. And it pumps out, 50 gallons of water a minute or whatever the flow rate might be. It needs a pipe this big, it needs a pump room bigger than my house, and so be it. If you look at the financial model behind that, usually the developer who's building the hotel is not the one occupying it. So he doesn't care if a gazillion liters of water or gallons of water gets flooded into a fire in 5 years' time, because he's long gone. That developer's built the building, sold it, or rented it out, and he's gone. It now becomes the tenant's problem, or the buyer's problem, and he's gone. He's taken his money and he's gone. So his purchase on a standardized building, just an office or a hotel, his standard purchasing strategy really is around price. So he wants the simplest product, the cheapest product, and the one that just meets the minimum insurance requirements. The insurance says it needs to be X, Y, Z, and he will find the cheapest product that can do that, because he has no benefit to installing the best fire system out there. There's no benefit to him. He's not going to be occupying the building. So, which naturally leads to sprinklers almost every time. And our nozzles are not $3 or $20 or $30. We don't want to be in that space. We're not interested in a Hilton hotel project and putting in, 400 nozzles at $30. That's not a business to us. There's a bigger solution around that. So where we want to focus, and we don't want to have that. So we don't want to have that tough sale of trying to convince somebody who doesn't want to buy our product, has no real benefit to buy our product. We don't want to be wasting our time trying to convince them that they should spend 2 times or 3 times or 4 times the initial capex against a sprinkler head, because he's going to gain the long-term value over the next 5 years will be 80% cheaper over 5 years. But he doesn't get that, and also he's not going to look at the micro detail that our pump room is a quarter of the size of what a normal sprinkler pump room is. So he's saving construction cost. Our pipes are this big versus sprinkler pipe this big. So again, there's a lot of cost savings around our product. But ultimately, we're trying to convince somebody who doesn't care. He just wants the cheapest, quickest, the easiest way in and out. So really around the fixed systems, our product really is around mission critical. So the mission critical business really is what we would call mission critical is somebody that needs our product. It has to work at all costs, and the cost of it not working is significant. It could be in life, cost of life, or it could be purely in financial revenue cost. So what I mean on that particular model is if we look at a car factory, for example, so let's say an automobile factory, GMC, Ford, Motor Company, whatever, they might have a robotic arm working on their production line. They've got sprinklers. The whole factory's under sprinklers, make no mistakes, normal conventional sprinklers. If that robotic arm catches a light and has a fire, which they do regularly, it's not even the cost of that robotic arm going up in smoke. The cost to Ford Motor Company is the downtime of production. The moment that robotic arm has a fire and is out of action, that production line stops, and they are producing X many cars an hour. That is huge cost to them. Huge, huge, huge cost. And often they've got to get in a new robotic arm which needs to be programmed and take several months. So those guys, you don't have to fight trying to convince them why your product's more expensive and the best in the market. They want the best, and they will pay anything for the best product to make sure they have 100% uptime at all times. It also means our product has to be the best, of course, but that's the space that we go after. And the same thing occurs for, let's say, power generation, at a power station where they're unloading coal or biomass or whatever they might be loading onto a conveyor belt, or in a sugar factory, whatever. Those plants are, those factories, the conveyors are running 24/7. Conveyors have fires all the time, because what happens is the rollers get jammed up with dust, or just the bearing seize up, and the roller rolling across the hot bed, across the rollers, the belt rolling across the rollers gets hot and eventually catches a light. And you have a serious fire, because what happens is a conveyor, imagine some of the conveyors I've looked at in the past could be 2 kilometers long in some of these big mines in South Africa. So the fire starts in one point, and within 2 minutes, it's 10 meters up the line, and that fire is now spreading. And what happens? The entire mine goes down, or the entire power station goes down, because they can't move the raw material in or out, because the conveyor belt is down because of a fire. So those guys will pay for top equipment, because it's not the cost of the nozzle, it's their cost of loss of downtime if their product doesn't work. So we call that type of thing mission critical. The same on a super yacht. Super yachts want the best, because if you're out at sea, and normal yachts, normal shipping, if you're out at sea and there's a fire, you cannot afford there's no second chance. There's no second chance. We're in a hotel, there is. The fire alarm goes off, everybody leaves, the sprinklers go off, the fire brigade arrives. It's a big mess, massive mess, huge cost to the insurers. But the Hilton's insured, so they don't really, I'm using Hilton example, excuse me, Hilton, sorry. The hotel don't really care. They've got insurance. No one was hurt because it's manned 24/7. Blah blah blah. So I'm sure you get the gist of it. So the fixed system business for us is very, very important, like extremely important going forward. But it's not relating to the fire and rescue products. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. You can see it's got its whole own business unit. So the first product under that unit that we will be rolling out under our mission critical thing is commercial kitchens. So you might say, why is that mission critical? Well, let's imagine, I don't know, let's say a McDonald's outside the Yankees Stadium on a match day. If that McDonald's has a fire in their kitchen, which again they do regularly, or a false alarm, they'll be out of action for the whole day. Can you imagine what the cost of that is? There's no way they take a chance. So, the same with hotels. So if a hotel kitchen goes, how do they feed all the guests? So our first rollout is the commercial kitchens, where our product is developed. We're going through the testing process. We've got to do testing for the European market, which covers the whole world, and we've got to do UL-FM testing for the American market. The UL one is slightly more complex for the American market, purely because our technology is disruptive. Nobody's been able to do what we can do with water alone. So the standard is actually written around a chemical system to do that. And we don't need chemical, we only need water. But this is for another day's conversation. I'm sure we'll do more on the technology around that. So the fixed system market, really, we will roll out first as the commercial kitchen systems. Then we'll roll out a bigger system into transformers and conveyors, and over pump rooms, server rooms, generator rooms, etc., paint booths. And then we will scale it up more and more further on from there. We also have nozzles that we've developed for the marine sector, for super yachts, which are sort of almost invisible. Which again is a niche sector. So the fixed fire systems is its own baby. It's not relating to fire and rescue. It runs on its, it needs its own skills, its own team, its own software. Everything on its own is independent. And then we can move on now to the next sector. So it leads me on to this next sector, which is really our E-Raptor. So our E-Raptor was developed initially for our own purpose. And what I mean by that is we were basically building small fire trucks onto it, small fire and rescue vehicles onto it. And it's an electric vehicle, battery powered. It has the highest payload of any EV, of any UTV on the market globally. So it's even stronger, higher payload and quicker and more better fits than the old Polaris 6x6. Polaris discontinued their 6x6. They have a hybrid type of product that they develop now, but it's not EV. We're the only EV in the market. So we developed it for our own purpose. However, that EV now has the capability to be rolled out globally as an EV vehicle for, let's say, the workhorse sector, if we want to call it, the workhorse market. That's agriculture, where farmers have got to move stuff around, inside airports where they're carting stuff, inside resorts where they're moving stuff from A to B. There's various different sectors inside large distribution, large factories, where they might be moving stuff around or moving people around. Currently on the 6x6 you've got a bigger payload, you've got a slightly bigger vehicle. The electric model doesn't exist apart from ours. So that particular market, the UTV market, is circa $11 billion. So it's not an insignificant market. It's as big as our fixed firefighting system potential and bigger than our fire and rescue market potential. But again, that EV business is totally different to our fixed systems, and it's totally different to fire and rescue. So the EV business on its own, as an E-Raptor, as a vehicle, we're not trying to compete with Tesla or any of the EV companies. That's not our model. Again, we niche, we focus on disruption, and we focus on places where other people cannot achieve what we're doing. So on our EV market, on our EV business, those particular little E-Raptor, the E-Raptor that we've got, which we intend to develop further and have some additional products in the product line, those products can be manufactured and distributed through normal distribution channels of small agricultural or industrial vehicles, i.e. any John Deere dealership, Polaris dealership, Kubota. There's a whole range of UTV dealers. None of them have electrical. And electric vehicles, no doubt, are the future of that sector as well. Why would a farmer be wanting to have the hassle of buying diesel or petrol or gasoline or whatever for his vehicle to run around his farm, have the hassle of it, storaging it, the cost of it, when he could just plug it into the wall at night and it'll do the same job, and have a bigger payload, and be quiet, and be clean, much easier to maintain, etc., etc., etc. So although that's not where we intended to go with the vehicle when we set it up, we've got to the point where it's good enough for that business. So we still want to obviously sex it up a bit more. We want to make it a bit more attractive looking, slightly better seats, slightly better steering. There's a bunch of technology that we're sort of bringing into it, potentially make it autonomous for some places, like distribution centers where the vehicle's going from A to B continually. Anyway, it's a whole different, but the point is that's a separate business unit. You can imagine the sales guy selling fixed systems or fire and rescue is not the same guy that would sell an EV through to a John Deere dealership. So that is its own business on its own. Again, 11 billion market. So if we look at what we've got in the current ILUS portfolio, and there's another significant asset that we may bring in within the next 3 months. More to be spoken on that in the future. But if we look at the current business now, focusing on the listing. So if we focus now on the actual listing, let's say spin out of, potential spin out, where people have said, well, if you're doing a spin out, what will be left in ILUS? Are you just going to get left with a carcass? All the assets are gone. Are we uplisting ILUS on its own? What's actually happening? Well, obviously we can't tell you what's actually happening yet until we're ready to announce it properly, for legal reasons and for market protection reasons. But we have made it pretty clear that ILUS, the current ILUS that people know, will become a conglomerate in the years to come. That business is going to be a monster. We want to get that into billions of dollars of revenue. So what's within the ILUS group, now you can probably understand it a little bit clearer from this presentation, is we've got fire and rescue vehicles, fire and rescue equipment as a business. We've got fixed systems as a business, which will start to be commercialized heavily first off from the kitchen system. And we've got the E-Raptor EV business. Those are 3 completely separate businesses, combined, which have a market potential of close to $30 billion. But they are all totally separate, independent businesses that require independent skills, independent management teams, independent manufacturing, independent routes to market. They are all totally independent businesses. So I'm sure from your side you can probably picture or imagine or discuss amongst yourselves what the potential could be if a spin out happened. For sure, if there was a spin out going to happen, it would probably be the fire and rescue business first, because that's the product, that's the business that is the most commercially developed. That's where the majority of the revenues come from. It's the easiest products to understand. It's the most technologically advanced at the current moment. And it would be very easy for the world to understand that for a spin out into a subsidiary, and a subsidiary would get uplisted into Nasdaq with an S1. It would raise in the capital that it need through an IPO, but ILUS would still be the owner of the majority of the stock, which obviously would mean all of you as our shareholders would have a major benefit from having a listed subsidiary company. And then potentially what would still stay in ILUS, if it was to go that way, would obviously be the fixed system business, which is bigger than the fire and rescue business. That's an $11 billion potential business, a potential market. And the EV, which is another $11 billion potential market. So hypothetically, if there was a spin out in that way, ILUS would still be bigger with still more potential and more assets than the spin out company, which would go up to Nasdaq. So in the short, medium term, until ILUS itself uplisted, the current ILUS business, let's say current ILUS conglomerate, would still be growing assets. And as I said, we may bring in another asset into that business, which is a really significant asset, which doesn't fit into any of the other categories, EV, fixed systems, or fire and rescue. So what I really have to say to you today is we can't say a lot about what we're actually doing. At this point, it'll become very clear, and we hope to make that official by at the shareholders meeting in January. All I can assure you, and hopefully you've kind of got to know us by now, and that we have a clear plan. We do what we say we're going to do. Losing is not an option for us. Not delivering is just not an option. We will deliver at all costs. That's the way we work. So when we say we're uplisting, there's a plan behind it, and we will be uplisting. But we can't tell you more at this point. And the shareholder value and the creation of value and wealth for our shareholders is at the forefront of our mind. We wake up every morning, firstly, to develop a business that's going to save lives and create wealth for our shareholders, and thirdly, to support our teammates. We're in this as a team. Our management team are strong. We wake up every day to focus on supporting each other. There's no way JP can do it alone. There's no way I can do it alone. There's no way Claire or Daniel or Kayom or any of the guys in our management team can tackle these type of projects alone. And so we have our own core team, but we also have all these external providers, lawyers, accountants, whatever that need to add to the party. And we've got the right recipe and the right mix to get us where we need to go. So all I can say to our shareholders, please trust in us, trust in what we're doing, and I'm relatively sure that you will not be disappointed when when D-Day comes and we start to announce the official rollout, or let's say potential spin-out uplisting plans. I'm pretty sure you want to make sure that you've got some shares in your back pocket when that happens, because I think it'll be very substantial and very beneficial to everybody involved, absolutely everybody, customers, shareholders, staff, people's lives who we're saving. Everybody is going to benefit out of our strategy and the way we're going. So I'm sorry we can't tell you more. I would love to tell you more, and we will tell you more the soonest opportunity that we have. But I will say I don't think anybody will be disappointed. The result, the outcome, or the strategy, and I'm pretty sure people will want to be part of it. Not only the existing shareholders, but external shareholders that may know or find out about it, through our PRs and our announcements. And I'm hoping that's going to bring an influx of additional capital and additional investors into the business, and take us to the next step. So I want to thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry it was a little bit long, but it's probably what you guys have wanted to hear for a while, a little bit more of a detailed explanation on the whole plan. And again, I thank you for trusting in us, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk today.